Welcome to Dear Business Coach, the podcast. My name's Elizabeth. Find one thing to move your business forward today with conversations, spotlights, interviews, articles, and free resources. Listen and follow and subscribe on social media. Dear Business Coach pages and groups. Dear Business Coach podcast. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and don't forget Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, anywhere you listen to podcasts. All it takes sometimes is one little thing to move your business forward today. You told me that enunciate it, recalibrating the scales came out of experience that you have in, I keep using the word executive recruiting, but what you were really doing was helping individuals coming to the United States, being placed here corporately.
Yes.
And you found that these individuals who were seeking help getting acclimated, finding a place, specifically you were recruiting for the Research Triangle Park, is that correct?
Yeah, so there actually were two different veins. So yes, recruiting was one particular vein, but then the other task or the other endeavor was exclusively serving as what they call a destination service consultant. Okay. So I'm the on the ground support person here in the States, well, in the triangle area of North Carolina, for any transferees that were being relocated from their home countries by their employers, very renowned employers relocating to the triangle. Yes, you're absolutely right, to help them to get their feet on the ground, to settling in services, getting them comfortable with acclimating to the area, navigating through different services, housing, culture, and the full gamut. It's very comprehensive. And I discovered between serving in that capacity and then on a personal level through that personal experience, courtesy of the two friends of mine, that there seems to be a need with people of all sorts, but even on a professional executive C-suite level, struggling with what I coin as communication insecurity. I'm coming from a place of empathy with that because being all honest and being the transparent, authentic soul and individual that I am, I also struggled with communication insecurity as a child. And I know I may be getting ahead of myself on that. So coming from that place of empathy, I realized that even people on various levels, even on a professional executive level, you have people struggling to communicate with their, in this case, their American English speaking skills, their elocution, their presentation skills, all things communication. And we've seen this, all of us. How many times have we seen, even being Native American English speakers, where we're interacting with someone of a different culture, say, they're from a different culture, different continent, and you're speaking Spanish, for example. I do speak Spanish. And you say, oh, pardon me, my, whatever the language is not so good. Okay, well, in their case, they're struggling with the same insecurity and they find themselves apologizing, excuse me, forgive me, my English isn't so good. So my position is, no, there's no need to apologize, I would like to be that conduit to help to facilitate that language barrier, to minimize that language barrier, that gap between the East and the West. Since we are collaborating, inevitably, this is where we are in the world and society today, for vast and varied reasons, due to outsourcing, exporting, importing, and things of that nature. We are essentially conducting, business is in progress, in full swing internationally throughout the globe. So if we're going to interact interculturally, then I would like to be that medium, to help to diminish that language barrier and to help those that may be seeking, to enhance their communication skills, for personal and for business reason, whether or not they need it for presentations, doesn't matter the industry, because it's needed for any and all industries. I mean, in every arena, there's communication is inevitable. And the need to communicate effectively and clearly is inevitable. So I'm very passionate about it, and I'd like to be that source.
Well, I didn't know when I was speaking to you about your coaching vertical that you had a book published. I didn't know that.
Yes.
And so what happened was I discovered that you have a personal story. So what you were explaining to me is, as you say, I'm coming from a place of empathy.
Yes.
You have personal experience that gives you an insight, as you also say, an ear.
Yes.
For helping folks who are seeking specific help on enunciation.
Yes.
But really, your coaching is layered with your personal experience, your empathy as to unblocking someone's communication, as you say, insecurities. And you told me that has a lot to do with your story. And before you read your work for us about your history, I also want to hear before you developed the vertical enunciate and recalibrating the scales, you started a long time ago with an endeavor called Rags to Riches. I have your biography here, and I'd like you to walk me through that. Okay. But you're from Chicago. I am. And you moved to the Miami area as a young adult and went to school there. You started at DePaul in Chicago, in Miami. Would you like to start with your schooling, or would you like to jump into the Rags to Riches?
So my schooling, yes. So my academic career is entirely based in Chicago. I started off in engineering, very STEM technical field. I was immersed in that arena. You know, it started my academic career, commenced my sophomore year of high school. But somewhere in the midst of my freshman year, I discovered that I'd fallen out of love with metallurgical engineering, very, very technical. My material science class had a lot to do with that, was very instrumental in my decision. And, you know, so I'd fallen out of love with that and made the decision, courtesy of another party, encouraging me to, you know, find a new path. Something that it had more of a gray area, something that was more befitting to my mutable personality, creative personality, which is essentially ended up being communication. So I transferred to DePaul University. At the time, I had my sights set on becoming a photojournalist, which I did pursue it. At the time, DePaul didn't have a photojournalism discipline. So I've been encouraged, you know, by the parties that be at DePaul University to go ahead and veer down the path of enrolling in the School of Liberal Arts and Sciences and taking the communication path.
Are you a LinkedIn user? If you are, you can join me for LinkedIn Live Audio with Elizabeth every week, usually on Mondays at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. I will have a LinkedIn Live Audio where we talk about podcasting for executives who speak and podcasting for team leaders who speak. These are the themes that are currently running. If that sounds like something you're interested, visit me, Elizabeth Walker at Work, on my LinkedIn profile.
So I heeded their wise counsel. I'd done that. I did immerse myself in photojournalism, working for a local paper that I think I omitted that part to you. Small publication, very renowned at the time, the Chicago Defender. I'd done that for a number of years, but my passion for that had waned. But my passion for communication, writing, all things communication, had been unwavering, unscathed throughout that process. So that basically just walking you down through that through that timeline, fast forwarding to today, realizing how relevant that unintentional path was, because I hadn't really intended, that was not my direction. You know, the winds had changed, the trajectory had changed, but I'm realizing how relevant this communication endeavor is now. You know, So, to making that decision, and it's serving me well.
And you told me that you didn't really become verbal until you were an adult or a young adult.
Oh,
and
yes.
so curious to know
Mhm.
how did that timeline work for you while you were deciding to go into communication?
Wow, you are evoking a great deal of nostalgia. No, I wasn't. I wasn't very vocal. You know, being very honest and very transparent. I was an extremely introverted child. Believe it or not, you know, I'm still technically an introvert or ambivert, as some may call it. But I had to. It was a working process over the course of years, over the course of decades, rehearsing privately in quiet corners as a child. Unbeknownst to everyone, you know, I would rehearse imitating personalities, doing different impressions, you know, which I still relish doing. I get a rise out of today, which had a lot to do with this communication, this communication endeavor as to how that happened, doing impressions. But no, I was not that vocal, and I didn't really transcend that skin, shed that snake skin until I would say my sophomore year of high school. I'd begun sloughing off the layers, but not until my adulthood. I would say my early adulthood is when I completely transcended it. I had to tap into that self-confidence, which is what I encourage to anyone, you know, basically availing of communication services. It does really emanate from, that's what communication insecurity is derived from. You know, it happens, it's coming from a place of a lack of self-confidence when we're apologizing for, you know, oh, my English is not so good, forgive me, or my Spanish isn't so good, you know, please forgive me, or whatever native tongue a person may speak. Again, there's no need to apologize, you know. I'm at the disposal of those who are receptive, you know, to avail of the services, void of arm twisting.
When did you start your radio show? Was that the Friends?
Yes. Jeffrey Bradley, give you a shout out to you. We have a history dating back to high school. We're very good friends. Thank you for reminding me. I actually need to reach out to him, he and his family, because we have a solid rapport. He is extremely instrumental. He was the person to encourage me, given my desire to pursue radio and being completely enamored with voice and all things communication and vernacular and linguistics and elocution. But having that unwavering passion, again, stemming from being that child imitating radio personalities since I was yay high. He said, why don't you just go ahead and start your own podcast? And I'd heard of podcasting, but I really wasn't familiar with it. So that journey began in 2017.
That was called the Recalibrating the Scales radio show. And you said that your goal was to aid disadvantaged women and male youth yearning to rehydrate, reinvent, and become reacquainted with their former and newfound selves.
Yes.
And I've mentioned to you that in reading your work and listening to your radio show, you use a lot of language when speaking to your audience that specifically expresses, I'm coming to you from my experience, from my journey.
Yes.
And you're not afraid to say that what you're teaching or what you are passing on is directly from coaching that you have received.
Yes.
From teachers that you admire or teachers that you directly worked with one-on-one.
Yes.
And when you jumped into the radio show, did you know that's what you were going to do with your messaging?
Yes, my intention then and through, each year, each phase, it becomes more profound, is always to come from a place of unadulterated authenticity and transparency. It's my moral imperative to do that, as much as it's my moral imperative to offer to broadcast, what I'm willing to do, what I'm willing to serve, this communication service or my communication services that I'm willing to render. They're all my moral imperative. And I do have to credit the coaches, the mentors, everyone instrumental along the way for that. I can't take the credit for that. No.
Well, I did skip over I said Rags to Riches. You were involved with a show that allows you to work with people getting ready for professional interviews, professional changes in life, and you told me that from a segment that was called Rags to Runway, not Rags to Riches. What was that?
So Rags to Runway is my baby. That's my fashion vertical. Yes, and I'm a teacher, a healer, and a creative of sorts. I do believe in having multiple verticals, wearing having multiple hats, so multiple pots brewing. But there is an organization that's actually Dress for Success. Dress for Success is national. It's a women's organization founded by one woman owned for women, disadvantaged women that are seeking job services, seeking to enter the workplace. So I was what they called an image coach. And this is another fancy of mine, but I had the pleasure of playing real live dress up. So not just the paper dolls, but dressing up their clientele in preparation for interviews, in preparation for landing a position. We were charged with outfitting them from head to toe. So there was tons of apparel, tons of inventory donated by vast and varied sources. And from everything from shoes, handbags, accessories, clothing, not headwear, that we were afforded with, to outfit these women for interviews. And if they scored, if they were offered the position, if they had a job offer, then they were outfitted for 1 week's worth of work attire for whatever role that befitting to that. So we dressed them according to the role they played. Yeah. It's very fulfilling.
How long did you do that?
Oh my God. I'd say I probably had given it, I don't know, maybe a good year and a half, maybe a year or two, I would say.
Well, I would like to ask you to say a little bit about your mom's influence with that, because I will ask you again when you get to some work that you wrote as dedication, accolades to your mom, your mother. But this is a good time to ask a little peek into where your spark for fashion comes from. What did your mom do when you were a little girl in Chicago?
Oh yes, my mother, in a much earlier phase of life, she's in a different phase of life. She's very religious, very conservative, very subdued. But and this is illustrated in one of my prose poems dedicated to her, but a master, she was an icon within her own right when it came to fashion, stage presence, a master MC, and she would MC her own fashion shows because she was immersed in sales at the time. So lingerie lines, Katani Original, I believe it was called. She would have women, she would employ, to host fashion shows. And I watched her, I would watch them. I would watch her perform. And, again, I imitated. So I drew from all of these skills. She is conclusively my first teacher, by the grace of God, the creator. So she is.
Well, you say that you would practice your radio show, your radio imitations in private. Did you have your own fashion shows too?
I didn't have my own. Well, I take that back. With my select group of friends and cousins.
I imagine so. I'm sorry, I should read.
We did. Yes. We did.
On your own, at home.
Oh, at home.
Private fashion shows. That's what I imagine. If you're not ready to get on stage, but you're watching mom do that, I imagine you probably have a little dress up.
Oh, between my mom and I'm the youngest I'm the youngest girl, I'm the youngest daughter. So all of my sisters are older, you know, they would dress me up. My sister Rita in particular, you know, Rita, thank you for that. She would dress me up. I watched them, you know, they're also fashion icons within their right. So I have to credit them, you know, for my fashion sense, you know, because I watched them and, you know, they would, you know, hand down some of their, you know, their fare to me and things of that nature, which I availed of. I watched them, you know, dress up and get made up, and I drew from that. I didn't necessarily act on it in my early childhood, but once I had begun to come out of my shell, my sophomore year of high school, it really, really took off. Yeah.
What was school like for you when you were younger?
Oh, boy.
If verbalization was difficult, it took
Mhm,
until
mhm.
high school to feel like you're finding some ground there. What was school like for you early?
So school, and I'm drawing from K through 8 in particular. My K through 8th grade, I've attended a K through 8 private or Catholic school in Inglewood, Chicago, Visitation Catholic School. And I did. I struggled with getting in front of people, but during junior high, we call it back home. Junior high, you know, middle school, it would be deemed as here. Again, that's when I began to come out my shell. I remember getting on the PA, they were soliciting for volunteers. And I actually had summoned, I don't think I shared this with you, summoned the nerve to get on the PA and to read and recite a poem. And I had done it with an accent. It was an African fable or folktale. And the role that I played, I was shaking in my boots.
And you were reading this over the PA?
Yes, I was shaking in my boots,
Well,
but I pulled it off. I'm like, I'm gonna do this. And I ran for president in 8th grade against a very, very popular gentleman. He's a former NBA player, Antoine Walker. Most popular guy in the school. I ran against him for president and surprisingly won. He was not happy about it. No, I did not cheat, Antoine, because I didn't read from a script. I memorized it, you know. So he said, "You cheated because you didn't read your debate speech." I said, "Well, that's what made it better." And I'm like, "Whoa, it was a shock. I actually won." So it was a defining moment for me.
So then did you now have to be in this public speaking position all of a sudden? Were you ready for that? Did you think about that?
I hadn't thought about it then because everything was private. But that was the same time, Inferno.
Great.
Inferno. That was that same year, I believe. That was 8th grade.
Ready?
Yes. So this is interpersonal communication, the endangered species. Once upon a time, in a domestic North American terrain, crimson and steel-colored telephone booths adorned weathered cement pathways betwixt and between urban and remote parameters. Romantic odes were exchanged between smitten, amorous lovers via hand-scribed letters, signed, sealed, and delivered with kisses prior to their expedition between cities, townships, countries, and continents via once reliable post-mail mediums. Pen pals were prevalent as opposed to becoming invaluable, antiquated, uncommissioned artifacts, fossils void of patrons. Letters, hand-scribed and meticulously chosen, cherry-picked parchment and/or stationery spritzed with love spell, Dolce & Gabbana, Bulgari, Fahrenheit, Perielis 360, cool water, or playful aromatic fare dispensed by Bath and Body Works, to name a few. Carefully chiseled handwritten correspondences doused in love and/or business in exchange for an honest, earnest response. From the recipient, of course, confirming receipt of its organic transmission, in lieu of a habitually blatant ignore, the new societal norm or status quo, in fact. Elongated and grammatically sound sentences and phrases took precedence over modern-aged abbreviations. Quality and substance of English vernacular once succeeded the present-day brevity exemplified through hurried digital messaging spewing OMGs, IDKs, IKRs, LMBOs, SNHs, etc., 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 etc. Indeed, the quality of language versus the diminished quantity of verbiage evident today was paramount, illustrating the progressively waning art of avid interpersonal, personable communication. My unwavering passion, nevertheless. There you have it.
Okay,
Yes,
and
yes.
the next one is accolades.
The accolades, okay. Okay. So this is the accolades dedicated to Mother. Yes, I inhaled the eau de parfum discharged by the summer drizzle. Ambient hymns swelled the pregnant pause preceding delinquent accolades professed to Mother, a repertoire of unrefined talent. Mother, my God-bestowed intercessor for early literacy. Her imparted seeds of English vernacular sown and watered. Every meticulously woven symbol organically rehearsed betwixt and between us amid dainty laughter. Nostalgia takes precedence, yielding anecdotes comprised of spectating, witnessing, watching Mother grace the stage. I, the apprentice, and she, the quintessential wordsmith, executing intricately cherry-picked syllables platonically seducing her awestruck patrons prior to a thunderous applause. Evoking my secret juvenile auditions and private corners of my childhood abode, mimicking, perfecting vocal renditions spewed by WNUA 95.5 Smooth Jazz, which ritually infused our habitat during that Puritan era. The prelude to my predestined platform, sustenance for prophecy manifested. The accolades to Mother.
And now the Inferno.
Inferno. Oh, Inferno. Inferno. Suddenly she'd been aroused from sleep to be greeted by a blinding smoke-filled room. Crawling into the kitchen, she found a blazing saucepan of French fries, grasping for the ceiling. Terrified, she throws an oily towel over. Stubbornly, it persisted to burn. Petrified, she throws over water, which spurred the fire to dance swiftly round the walls, totaling the curtains, blocking the darkness. Zealously, she seized the curtains and smothered the fiery pan out. All of this transpired because of an urge for a midnight snack.
And Normia wrote that in 8th grade.
8th grade. Yeah.
You wrote it because you wanted to write it. Did you write it for the poetry contest?
I did. So that was based upon a true story. I nearly set the house on fire, falling asleep, frying French fries, waking up to an inferno. And my mother, being the instrumental person that she is, she encouraged me to write about it. There was a poetry contest in 8th grade. You're right, absolutely right. And contemplating what should I write about it? I want to go for it,
Hey, listeners, don't forget to subscribe to email if you haven't already. Do this at dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. And if you are a new subscriber, look for the magazine coming up. You can get a free download as a new subscriber. That's dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, you are a superstar.